This is number 53, Psalm 53 today, Boy in his Bible. This is the psalm well known because it starts off with that recognized phrase, the fool have said in his heart, there is no God. Well, of course the fool have said in his heart there is no God, because there's no God in his heart. God is everywhere else but except in his heart. So you can understand that. Now, I do want you to take that verse as one of the points of this psalm for today. The fool says in his heart, there is no God, because no God is in his heart. If God is in his heart, he would see God everywhere. The people who have God in their lives see God everywhere. They see it in history, see it in poetry, see it in music, see it in nature, see it in the universe, see it in the face of a flower, the face of a baby, the face of a child. See it in a little child running or crawling. See God everywhere, as well as in the Christian faith and the Christian truth and the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ. The more you have God in your heart, the more you see God. It's simple, isn't it? As you would expect. And then the last verse, that's the first verse. Take that on board. They are corrupt, the ones who say, no God. They recognize that there's no God in their heart, and they're absolutely right. You can agree with them. In their heart, there's no God. Everywhere else, except in their heart. Isn't that a shame? Isn't that something to be sad? Oh, that the salvation of Israel will come out of Zion, when God bringeth back the captivity of his people. Jacob shall rejoice, and Israel shall be glad. Now, this is a picture that's worth reflecting on. Maybe here we see there is a need for revival and renewal in Israel itself and in Jerusalem itself, which we find so often it needed it, many, many times. And maybe the cry is that the salvation of God, with all its ritual and the temple with all its priesthood, just were keeping things to themselves, and they wanted the salvation of God not to be contained, but to be released. And he's praying, oh, the salvation of God was come out of Zion, when God bringeth back the captivity of his people. Jacob shall rejoice, and Israel shall be glad. Jacob, as so often we say, is the struggle and strife of the nation, named after Jacob, whose name was called Israel because he had struggled with good and bad and right and wrong and righteousness and with peace and war, so to speak. And he came out victorious, but it was a struggle. He had a dream of God when he was a young man and saw angels of God ascending and descending. And then as a much older man, he wrestles with God in an angel, and his thigh is put out of joint, and he forever has to worship by faith God, not on his knees as he used to, but on a staff. Forever afterwards. A man who struggled, and he called his sons Israel. And he was called Israel. And Israel shall be glad, and Jacob shall rejoice. I like it when I read the name Jacob. I identify with Jacob more than any other human character in the Old Testament. There are two people in the Old Testament that jump out for me, and both of them struggled. There is Jacob and there's Job. I like Job because he shows me how to be a businessman in a correct way, in a righteous way, in a good way. Well, this is your verse. The fool has said in his heart, there is no God, and you can say you're right. There's no God in your heart, so there's no God for you. The righteous can say there is a God, and God is everywhere, and they see it in every place. The salvation of God needs to go out. And God is so good to us. He wants to bring back the captivity. of his people. He wants them close to him. He wants to be salvation, and he wants to be freedom. And Jacob shall rejoice, and Israel shall be glad. The boy in his Bible. Thank you for listening.